Hello everybody and welcome to video number 11. And since I did Outsiders last time, I feel like having an Outsiders week. So last time we talked about the different characters on the Greasers side of the story. And so I thought today we would take a step back, and no matter where you're at in reading the story, whether you're just starting, somewhere in the middle, or you've already finished the book, maybe you've read it several times at this point, a great strategy is to use a plot diagram, and this diagram will help guide you not through just understanding the characters, but will also help lead to, okay, what's the author's greatest message here? What are the central themes of the story? So let's begin. So the plot diagram is on Google Classroom right now, and it's not a mandatory assignment, but is an optional strategy to help you more deeply understand the book. And you can fill it out as you go, or go back and do some filling out, just as a way to help guide you and understand the different aspects. Everyone has a copy on Google Classroom, so you can fill it out or just look at it while you're reading the book. I do want to today just go through the different parts so you understand what is going on with each aspect. So the exposition in the bottom left-hand corner is where you want to look at first. Exposition is simply the background information of the story. This is where the author gives you, okay, this is where this takes place, when it takes place, here are your main characters. Exposition comes from the Latin to expose or display, and what the author is really doing is just displaying for you, hey, this is the setting of our story. So for Outsiders, obviously that would be Tulsa, Oklahoma in the 1960s, with the situation climate being the social class tensions between the Greasers and the Socs, and the characters which we have talked about already. Now, the next thing I want you to look at is rising action. And those are the different colored bars that are going up the left-hand side. Those are the beginning actions, beginning conflicts that we see in the book, that rising tension. And you can probably guess already what some of those are, with Ponyboy getting beaten up by the Socs, the conflict with Johnny in chapter 4, and it's just mounting and mounting, and that will eventually lead to the climax of the story, which is that purple cloud at the top of the page. Now, all throughout of the story, you have a central, main conflicts, and those are between the protagonist, as you see at the bottom middle of the page, the protagonist versus the antagonist. Now, your protagonist is your main character, your Ponyboy in this case, and antagonist can be several things. Now, what makes Outsiders so great is that it has several conflicts going on, and I'm not sure how much you know about the different types of conflicts from your previous classes, but there are 4 main types of conflict. And if you look at this chart, I think this is really helpful to understand if anything that you are reading, or even TV shows or movies, have these different types of conflicts. And for the Outsiders, it has all 4. And the first is person versus person. So that's where you see the conflict. It is external. For example, you see the conflict between, Ponyboy and him getting beat up by the Socs. You can see that conflict. That is person versus person. The second type of conflict is person versus self, internal conflict. And this usually has to do with the main character, but with the outsiders, you can see there's actually, you have person versus self happening in a few of the main characters of the outsiders. So be looking for that, especially with Ponyboy as you're reading. There is a person versus nature in The Outsiders, so be looking for that later as you read. And then finally, person versus society, and this is an external conflict as well, and you can see this with the Greasers especially, how their situation where they have conflicts with the police and with the court system, and that this conflict leads to further problems. So look for person versus society as you're reading the book as well. So as we go back to the plot diagram, we have talked about the things on the left side, and we've talked about the things in the middle with the climax and the major conflicts, but we haven't talked about the falling action. So after the climax of the story happens, there's typically events that happen afterwards that lead to different resolutions at the end of the story. So be looking for what happens to each of the characters and the end of the book that lead to the resolution. Okay? And you'll see resolution in the bottom right-hand corner. Finally, after you look at all of these different elements of the story, you'll see that there is a box at the bottom for theme or themes. And there are several themes in this story, and I've kind of alluded to a few of those as I was talking about conflict and talking about the Greasers. So be thinking about what are the big lessons that S.E. Hinton is trying to teach us. Why does this story have an everlasting impact? I've had several parents say that they read this when they were in school. I read this when I was in school. Why is this a book that has been able to be such an enduring classic? And also just what are the central ideas that she is trying to get across in the book? So these are things that we will continue to discuss. So, and it just helps you have a deeper understanding of what you're reading besides, oh, that's what happened in that book. So I hope this has been useful to you. And we had our special Outsiders videos for the week. So I will see you next week for video number 12, where we're going to switch back to social studies and talk about the role of the church in medieval Europe. So I'll see you then. Bye.